this button. Hey everyone, I don't know if you've noticed, but lately those slow motion inspirational travel vids are getting more and more unpopular. Although I do love making those and there is probably a time and place for that, I do think that creating meaningful videos has never been so important as of now. It's just that people want good stories from the ones that shake you to the core, and I guess with everything that happened last year, we've really learned to appreciate good storytelling even more. Life is too short for content that leaves you with nothing. So on that note, let's talk about documentaries and more specifically what I learned from creating my first documentary piece about two passionate film photographers who founded their own film lab here in Plovdiv and happen to be very good friends of mine. Although this video is mainly going to showcase the behind the scenes of that process, I also want to share my experience so that everyone out there who is eager to start creating can find the motivation to do that. The first thing I learned is that in order to tell a good story, you probably must be more prepared in the pre-production regard than I was. I thought that for a documentary specifically, you have to go with the flow and sort of tell the story that's happening right in front of you, and that was my big mistake, for which I paid later in the editing room. You definitely want to have control over the story and know everything about your characters and their story before shooting it. Because if you don't, you might let that new information you just learned about them on set take control over the whole piece you're creating, and you definitely don't want that. So ask your questions prior to filming. Sit and plan most of the scenes you're going to be filming and decide the whole vibe of your film. This is going to help you a lot in post and is also the thing that differentiates a good story from a great one. Something I found challenging at first was having to tell the story of two people simultaneously. Although they are part of the same team and have established 7 films lab together, they are in the end two different individuals with their own story. Finding a middle ground in this case is important. So them going on this trip together, experiencing everything there, and then developing the photos was my starting point. It's where I sort of tried to establish this connection between their characters in the film.
Ако можеш първо да се представиш.
Аз съм Илко Ражев, на 29 години от Пловдив.
They might be best friends in their real lives, but for the people who are just watching this film without knowing them, we have to bring them to the story and sort of draw the dots and help the viewer make the connection between them. Our schedule was pretty full. We shot the whole thing in 2 days, which is more than enough for such a production, but you have to prepare yourself for some tough time. As an artist, I always find it hard to create in a well-known environment. I prefer exploring new places, and it was great that Victor and Ilko felt the same way about that. So we visited Dimitrovgrad and Haskovo, or as we later called them, Detroit and Houston. Being in a new place definitely gives you more freedom as you're experiencing everything for the first time, and this could definitely help with sparking your creativity. It was blazing hot outside. I was shooting with my brand new Canon C200 for the first time, and that camera can be heavy, especially if you carry it around the whole day. After sunset, we headed back to Plovdiv, and more specifically to the lab, where we spent a good amount of time. We had to shoot the process of developing and scanning the film rolls that were shot throughout the day, and this whole thing lasted until 4 a.m. in the morning when we finally headed to bed. The next day, it was time for filming the interviews, which was something I was a bit nervous about. What do I ask? How do I ask it? And so many questions. Which one is the most important one? My tip is to just try and have a normal conversation with the person who is sitting in front of you. They're also going to be nervous in the beginning, so just help them relax, and believe me, they're going to repay you by spitting some gems after. Another advice is to wait for like 5 seconds after they're finished talking before, asking your next question, because this is going to make them feel like you're expecting them to say something else, and this can often lead to them saying very good stuff. Always keep in mind how long you want the edit to be, because if it's relatively short, you don't want to waste your time with asking irrelevant questions and having a hard time in the editing room after. We waited until nightfall and shot the darkroom scenes, which are one of my favorites by the way. Because film, and photo paper mainly, are sensitive to light, that's why we waited to get dark and created this environment. As I already said, I had a bit of a hard time while editing because I wanted to say so many things and I really didn't know where to start. So my biggest tip is to be prepared, but not to the point where you feel like you're doing a narrative film. We don't want that. Leave a space for freedom, but know your end goal. And last but not least, have fun, because filmmaking is about that as well. So yeah, this kind of wraps up my first documentary shoot and what I learned from it. Hope you found that interesting and insightful, and see you around. Follow me on Instagram at Western Island. Thank you.